How would you define it? So Matt says, as statements are executed, the program reads them from top to bottom. Okay. Deb says, rules to decide when to execute one set of code versus another. Okay, cool. Yeah, based on maybe certain conditions or criteria or something. Alan says the order which commands are executed, which can be altered by certain statements. Okay. The order of which code is executed. Nice. How Node will move through the commands code. Yeah. Helps make decisions. Yeah, these are all really good explanations. So remember that like control flow as a bigger concept, it's not specific to JavaScript. You know, we've got control flow in Python and Ruby and, you know, any other language. But yeah, that's a really good definition. I think if we were to sum up and combine all of those statements, I put it in the, well, let me put the screenshot into Slack. I would sum up control flow as a fundamental concept in programming that allows you to dictate how your code runs under different conditions until a certain condition is met. So yeah, you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head there with those statements. So thank you for that. I have this this image hanging on my wall. I love it. Laboratory troubleshooting flowchart. I think this is very applicable, particularly in the South. So this would be an example of control flow. I don't know, maybe if you're like working on your car or trying to get some IKEA furniture built. So we'd start at the top, and this program, does it move? Yes or no, choose your own adventure. So if it does move, should it move? So that would be the next expression or condition that we would evaluate. If it should move, no problem. If it doesn't move, then throw some duct tape on there. The other side of the coin, does it move? No. Well, should it move? We would evaluate that. If it should move and it doesn't, then let's throw some WD-40 on it. Should it move? No, then no problem because it doesn't move anyway. So that would be like the southern version of control flow applicable to everyday living in the A in Atlanta, I think. So yeah, it's pretty much how we make decisions, how your code is going to run under different conditions or circumstances. So let's walk through this and then get you guys to some practice time with this stuff. Block statements. So this is, statements are meant to be executed after a control flow operation will be grouped into what is called a block statement. So your basic run-of-the-mill if-else statement consists of some block statements that define what do we want to do if certain conditions are met or not met, etc. So these statements are wrapped in a pair of curly braces, and they're just referred to as blocks of code. So we're going to look at these in a minute in our if-else, the if-else statements that we create. So that's considered a block of code. One thing to keep in mind with if-else statements is that if-else statements don't have scope associated with them. So when you see a block of code, unlike functions that we're going to talk about Thursday, you don't have to worry about scope, local scope, global scope, that kind of thing. You don't have to worry about that with control flow because that's kind of a different animal altogether, which we'll talk about Thursday. So with block scope, you've seen in JavaScript that scope changes often. In the case of block statements, you don't have to worry about it, as opposed to functions that we'll talk about on Thursday. So in this example that I pasted into Slack, this entire statement knows about the different var x's. It's something to be aware of because in this example, the var x can be overwritten because there is no scope involved. So we're actually like reassigning a var x in this example. We don't need to worry too much about that, but just know with if-else statements, we're not dealing with scope yet. Thank goodness. So a conditional statement, kind of our basic if-else run-of-the-mill statement. Let's take a look at those. So conditional statements are a way of essentially skipping over a block of code if it does not pass a Boolean expression. JavaScript supports two conditional statements, if, else, and switch. So let's take a look at if, else first. Probably the more common variety of conditional statements that you guys are going to use most often. So an if, else statement So if, then you pass in an expression in the parentheses, and if that expression evaluates to true or false, that determines what block of code will run. So if the expression is true, then that current block of code will run. If not, it's going to keep going down the chain to the next else statement, or else if else statement, what have you. In Python, it's actually else if. I don't know if there's any Python folks, but it's really funny. Python is, well, actually Ruby is else if, and Python is elif, and JavaScript is else if. So it keeps getting more compact for what it's worth. So in this kittens example, I'm actually gonna, let me share my screen and we'll run through this, because I also want to show you guys a tool that will come in really handy with your labs and code alongs. Have you guys, I know that we mentioned it, have you guys used Replit before or heard of this online tool? Okay, cool. This is a really, really handy, it's a great quick and dirty environment to play around with code. You don't have to create a separate file, then go to the terminal and run it with Node. This is kind of a one-stop shopping situation. Let me Slack this out. Let me show you Replit in general. So there's a couple of these out there. I think you guys may have used JSBin or CodePen in your fundamentals pre-work. And this is kind of the same gist, although this is more just for like scripting languages. This doesn't have like views or CSS or HTML. It's much more stripped down, which is really nice. And there's several different environments. So there's Python, Ruby, JavaScript. Oh, they do have an HTML, CSS now. I hardly ever use the Replit version. I usually just go to CodePen if I'm going to do that. But it's a super handy tool, and I'll Slack out the link. So if you guys want to go ahead and open up a new Replit, specifically a JavaScript Replit, I'm just going to run through some examples using this. It's a little bit easier. And then if you guys want to use this for lab time, I think it'll save you some of the trouble of going back and forth between Atom and Node and such. In any event, let's walk through this kittens example. And I imagine that you guys are pretty savvy at this stuff already from the pre-work. Make that a little larger. So we're going to declare a name of kittens up here at the top. This is barking at me because it doesn't like the name, because name can sometimes be a keyword. Sometimes it like barks at us. I'm going to put, just so it'll shut up, and do first name. That is a cool thing about this, is that it does have some linting capability, but sometimes it's a little annoying. And unfortunately with Replit, you can't like select all and replace all of something. Anywho, okay, so in this if else statement, we're declaring a variable called first name, and we're just going to assign the string of kittens to that variable. And then we're going to have some conditional and if else conditional based on that, that variable name. So if first name equals puppies, then we're going to return the first name, and then we're going to, we saw this in the earlier lesson, right? So we're going to kind of do some string concatenation, some fancy string concatenation, and add an exclamation point to the end of the variable. If this evaluates to true, we'll do that. If this evaluates to false, which it should, we're going to go down the chain. So we're going to go to the next else if statement. So in this one, we're going to evaluate, does first name equal kittens? And this one should evaluate to true, right? Because that looks pretty solid. I have two kittens strings. So once this evaluates to true, then we're going to grab the variable first name, and then we're going to add 2 exclamation points to the end of that, and that's what we're going to return. If both of these evaluate to false, then we'll go to this next condition. However, it looks like this one does evaluate to true. I think we can all agree on that one. So it's not even going to evaluate this last else statement. It's going to kind of short circuit it, right? So once it finds a true condition, once it's satisfied, it's just going to stop running the rest of the if else statement, which is pretty sweet. And we can see over here when we run that code. By the way to run the code is if you paste it in here, just pretend that this is like your Atom text editor. You can put some code over here. And then if you hit run, This is essentially the same thing as running node, then the file name in your console, in your terminal. It's kind of the same principle. So when we run this, we're getting, we're returned, the expression is returning, statement is returning, kittens with 2 exclamation points. So it looks like that this second condition is being satisfied. So this is evaluating true, which is pretty sweet. And we see right here that is indeed the result that we should get. One thing to note, just to make note of, this is a pretty important concept when you're going through this stuff. Try not to assign variables within your statements. That's kind of a big no-no. That can kind of mess up the logic that you're trying to go through. So it's not recommended. So it's recommended to not assign variables in the conditional expression, because the assignment of a value to a variable like this, where it says student equals Jamie, that's not going to work too well. And it has to do with scope. So we said that conditional statements, they don't have scope involved. So if you try to assign variables within your if-else statements, you can run into trouble. Now, this is different than functions and scope, which we'll talk about Thursday. You can absolutely create and assign variables within functions and such, but we want to try to stay away from that here when we're talking about conditional statements and control flow. So again, just something to tuck away into the old noggin there. The ternary operator, I really love this thing. When I discovered the ternary, I think I probably like overused it. I love the ternary operator. Maybe you guys have seen this before. You see like a little question mark and then like a colon. So this is a really cool shortcut way to write a conditional statement. It's really good if you're evaluating like 2 things. So your basic if-else statement, where you have two conditions. If true, do this. If false, do this other thing. If you find yourself writing some code like that, sometimes a ternary is a really slick way to condense that code on one line. You certainly don't have to, and it's probably like sometimes you can get a little too clever by half using these things, but I think they're really fun. So this is an example of a ternary operator. And as the name suggests, ternary means that there's 3 parts, or tri, T-R-I, means that there's 3 parts to this conditional. And let's just take a quick peek. I don't know if you guys have used these before, but they're pretty fun. I'm just going to copy this one in the interest of time, this first one. So the way that a ternary works is the condition to the left of the question mark, this is what we're evaluating. So this could be, we're just using a Boolean of true here. This could be anything like name equals kittens or whatever. The point being, whether this evaluates to true or false determines which other thing is going to process or which other thing is going to run. So in this example, we're going to evaluate the Boolean true. Now, the Boolean true is probably going to be true. In fact, it is going to be true 100% of the time. So the way that this works is if this evaluates to true, this ternary operator is going to return the first condition, or the condition to the left, if you guys can see it, of this little colon here. Let me make this a little larger so you can see it spread out. So we have the condition or the expression that we're evaluating, and then if it's true, we're going to do this, and if it's false, we're just going to do the thing on the other side of this colon right here. So that's kind of how this is set up. Like if we really want to break this down, this is essentially like the bare bones of a ternary. We evaluate something. If it's true, do something here. If it's false, do something here. You don't have to use these, but I think they're really fun, and you'll definitely see them out there. So let's run this block of code, or this line of code, and we get a console log of it is true, because this condition is true, obviously. So it console logs it is true right here. Now if we change this to false, just for example, and we run it, we'll get it is false. So this evaluates to false, so it runs the thing after the colon, returns that. So as the lesson says, you can think about the ternary operator as a concise if-else in a one-line statement. You certainly don't have to use ternaries. Sometimes they can get a little crazy, So if you have an if-else in your block of code, like maybe you want to do a couple of different things for each evaluation, then maybe a ternary is not like the best, use case for that. But for a very simple one, I think they're really fun and kind of clever to use them. I always look for ways to try to like dry up my code. Does anyone know what dry means? When we talk about dry in the context of programming?
Repeat yourself?
Yeah, don't repeat yourself. Yeah, so making your code very clean, not repeating yourself and stuff. And so instead of maybe having a couple of lines of if-else statement code, maybe you want to condense it into one. But that's a ternary operator. Sometimes those are pretty fun. Whew, okay, I apologize for all the yapping. Let's get to some you-dos. So what I want to do, I'm going to put you guys into breakout rooms briefly. This isn't like the big lab time, but I'm going to put you guys into rooms, let's say for 10 minutes. I'm going to stop my screen share. I'll put you guys into rooms for 10 minutes. Just see how many of these you can get through. I don't anticipate that you'll get through all of these, but let me paste these into Slack. And just play around and help your buddy. But here's 4 you-do exercises for control flow. So number 1, and you can use Replit if you want. In fact, I would encourage you to use it just because it's a little faster for these exercises. See if you can write a script that prompts the user for their current mood. If the user inputs happy, then print, yay, me too. If they enter sad, then print, all cheer up. Else just print, so moody. And there's actually a solution at the bottom of the lesson if you get stuck. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see that. Number 2, use conditionals to check if a hard-coded number is odd or even. Number 3, use conditionals to check if a hard-coded number is divisible by 2 or 3. And then number 4, use conditionals to check if a hard-coded quantity is 1 or greater than 1. Again, just give you guys a little bit of time to practice this stuff. I'm going to put you guys into breakout rooms with your buddy, with your pal. Any questions before I put you guys into breakouts? Okay, cool. So I'll be here. Just ping me if you get stuck. But we'll just take about 10 minutes. Just do as much as you can. And we'll see you guys back in here in 10-ish minutes. So let me open up the rooms.